The Chargers have been linked to Malik Nabers ever since the season ended, and now that Keenan Allen has been traded, it makes even more sense for the Chargers to pick him at 5. The Chargers need a wide receiver, and Joe Hortiz, he picks best player available, and if you stick at 5, Malik Nabers, he's got a very strong case at being the best player available no matter who is on the board. But then there's also the argument to make, like, why would you draft a wide receiver that highly when you're just going to have a run-heavy offense with a dominant offensive line, because that's what Jim Harbaugh wants to run. You need to have a good offensive line, so let's put that 5th pick towards the offensive line. Jim Harbaugh doesn't believe in the forward pass. He's going to play football from 1948. Well, the Chargers have shown a lot of interest in Malik Nabers, so today I'm going to break down all of the connections that they have had, so make sure to like and subscribe if you do enjoy this content, man. It helps me out so much. And now let's start off with this pro day. So we all know Malik Nabers. He's big, he's athletic, he's explosive, he's fast, and he just proved it at his pro day. He didn't do a lot of the drills at the combine, but look at this vertical jump, 42 inches on the vertical jump at 6 foot, 199 pounds. That would have tied him for second among all the wide receivers at the combine this season. And then the broad jump, 10 feet and 9 inches. That would have been 6th best at the combine. And then the 40-yard dash, he ran a 4.35, but then he tweeted later on, he's like, hey, give me that 4.28, because that's what he thinks he ran. It wouldn't have put him up there with, Xavier Worthy this year. He had a 4.21, but still, anything under 4.4 is extremely fast. You don't need anything more than a 4.3, to be honest with you. And if you look at the coaches who were sent to the LSU Pro Day, Sanjay, the Chargers wide receiver coach, is there to put some work in, see Malik Nabers up close and personal. You don't send a position coach to a pro day unless you have a lot of interest in a prospect. And reportedly, the Chargers have been interested in Malik Nabers ever since the combine. Remember this tweet? The same guy who said that the Chargers want Malik Nabers this year was the same guy who said a couple years ago that the Chargers wanted Zion Johnson at about that same time during that scouting combine. And listen, I'm not saying, hey, Malik Nabers, this is for certain going to be the pick, but I am at least saying the Chargers certainly have interest, and they would at least consider picking Malik Nabers if they have to stay at 5. And there are tons of reasons to like Malik Nabers. So obviously Joe Hortiz would like him. He fits the size that he likes, the athleticism. He's got a huge amount of potential, and the yak ability that Malik Nabers has. He is just so quick, so fast, so explosive, and you can line him up out wide, you can line him up in the slot, you can motion him wherever you want. This guy has been compared to wide receivers like Antonio Brown because of his shiftiness and explosiveness, really, really quick feet. He's also a great route runner. I mean, don't disrespect his route running ability. You line him up in the slot and you run him right up the seam. LSU did that a ton this past season, and boy, it was dangerous. He scored a lot off of that, and teams were not able to keep up with his speed on the inside. And then you line him up on the outside, you can just have him run a vert, you can have him run a curl, you can have him run any sort of intermediate route over the middle. He can catch the ball over the middle. The only thing that he struggles with at times is, well, sometimes people say he's not really a great vertical threat on the outside because he can't keep up with speed with other cornerbacks who are very athletic and physical. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if you run him on a vert, just straight 9 on the outside, I'm totally fine throwing him the ball 10 out of 10 times, and I'm expecting him to catch it like 8 or 9 times, no matter what that cornerback is doing, whether he has separation or not, because he can come down with a contested catch. And at 6 foot, we know that he's got that vertical jump ability because we just saw that pro day, 42-inch freaking vertical leap, and that huge broad jump at 10 feet and 9 inches. He can jump up and get the ball. He's got great body control. I'm not worried about him having a contested catch along the sideline like some people are. But the other concern, the really only weakness, is like sometimes he doesn't win those press matchups on the outside with some really, really physical corners. He could stand to have some better hand usage just right off the snap. But other than that, there's a reason that this guy is going to be picked so freaking highly. He has shades of Antonio Brown and Jamarr Chase, who also went to LSU. I mean, just look at this. You can see how many similarities there are. Jamarr Chase with the size and the athleticism, and Malik Nabers, I think he may even be a better prospect than Jamarr Chase was, and I loved Jamar Chase. And look at how great he is in the NFL right now. And also Antonio Brown, he was great in the NFL too. I mean, do you think the Bengals regret taking Jamar Chase, the best player to Pro Day? Big man Joe Hortiz, the general manager, was there as well. So obviously there is a ton of interest in Malik Nabers. That is absolutely confirmed. So would they take him at 5? Well, Joe Hortiz has drafted wide receivers higher than offensive linemen with the Ravens. Just look at guys like Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, both win in the first round. Marquise Brown win in the first round. And those guys, what do they have in common? They're fast. And Zay Flowers, he's got that shiftiness. He's quick. Basically, every wide receiver that the Ravens have drafted, since Joe Hortiz has been like director of player personnel, every one of those receivers has had a lot of speed and athleticism. Malik Nabers is the fastest and most athletic wide receiver in the class this year. And for that reason, what if they have Malik Nabers over a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr.? I mean, that's not a crazy thing to say because there are also tons of reports right now that a lot of teams have Malik Nabers as wide receiver 1 over Marvin Harrison Jr. The Chargers could certainly be one of those teams. And also shout out to Charlie on Twitter for bringing this to my attention because Jim Harbaugh wanted to draft Julio Jones in the first round when he had a pick within the top 10. He wanted to take a wide receiver when he was with the 49ers. So look, if Jim Harbaugh was on board at taking a wide receiver in the top 10 when he was with the 49ers, why would he not be on board now, especially considering that best player available, it's definitely going to be wide receiver if we say at 5. I keep saying that. I know a lot of Chargers fans would love to see Malik Nabers over Marvin Harrison Jr. There's been a lot of kind of hate about Marvin Harrison Jr. I still think he's the best wide receiver in the class, but Malik Nabers, obviously he's right there, and the Chargers would be totally fine with selecting Malik Nabers at 5th overall if they do not trade down, because I still think they do want to trade down, because there have been reports still that the Chargers, what they want to do is they want to trade down and address that offensive line. They want to build a dominant offensive line. That's what Jim Harbaugh just said in his interview at the NFL annual meeting. If you didn't see my video yesterday, you can check that out. But he said he wants to build a dominant offensive line because that position group is the most important one in football. So obviously with the 5th pick, why would they not address the offensive line? Especially considering that it's a weakness. Well, they certainly could pick an offensive lineman there. It may very well be between Malik Nabers and an offensive lineman at 5th overall, but obviously the reports are they want to trade down and address the offensive line. So that tells me that they just want to trade down more than anything. And it very well could be, between picking Malik Nabers at 5th overall or picking an offensive lineman at 5th overall, or trading down. Those could be the 3 scenarios that we're looking at. I think they would rather trade down and then address offensive line because there have been so many reports about that. So let's say that's what happens and they can't pick Malik Nabers because now they're picking at 11th and 23rd overall. So 11th, you can pick Talize Fuanga, whoever you want at offensive line. I don't care. Insert your favorite offensive lineman at 11. At 23, what if the Chargers are at the LSU Pro Day sending Sanjay and Joe Hortiz because they want to look at the other LSU wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr. Now, Brian Thomas Jr., he's got that same kind of speed, same kind of size. He's actually bigger. He's 6'3", and he's got explosiveness and athleticism just like Malik Nabers does. He's not as good of a route runner. He really kind of only ran like a vert route every time he was at LSU. But listen, man, he's got shades of what DK Metcalf was coming out of college. Who coached DK Metcalf at Seattle? Sanjay. And Sanjay going to the LSU Pro Day, maybe he's looking at Brian Thomas Jr. and Joe Hortiz is saying, hey man, look at this guy and tell me if you can develop him the same way that you developed DK Metcalf with the Seahawks. I mean, both of these guys were extremely good athletes, but they had a limited route tree in college, so that was the weakness. But what does Joe Hortiz always say? Don't tell me what a prospect can't do. Tell me what they can do. And what Brian Thomas can do is take the freaking top off of a defense. And maybe the reason they sent both Joe Hortiz and Sanjay out there is, because they want to have that confirmation that Malik Nabers is the guy who they thought he was, but they also want to get a little more information on Brian Thomas Jr. because if they do have that trade down scenario, they want to be prepared to take their favorite wide receiver at 23, and that very well may be Brian Thomas Jr. I think he fits everything that the Chargers want with the size and athleticism combo. And what Greg Roman would want to do, you just run the ball and then you have a play action vert route. You get a big freaking wide receiver that can run really, really fast on the boundary, run a double move, boom, go. And it would also fit perfectly with our wide receiver coach in Sanjay because he helped develop DK Metcalf into becoming the wide receiver that he is today. With a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., you're not going to ask him to run a full route tree because LSU didn't do that. You're just going to ask him to do what he does best in the Chargers offense. And I think with the coaches that we have right now, obviously Sanjay proved he can do it with DK Metcalf. Jim Harbaugh proved, how great of a coach he is everywhere he's gone. I really like the scenario of picking Talize Fuanga or JC Latham at 11 and then Brian Thomas Jr. at 23. I think that would really, really elevate this offense to the next level. But obviously, in order for that to happen, we would need to be able to trade down with the Vikings. So let's hope that the Cardinals stay at 4 and pick Marvin Harrison Jr., and then we can have this trade down scenario. And if you didn't see my video yesterday, I broke down everything that Jim Harbaugh had to say about the offensive line. A lot of really good stuff in here.